Welcome to The Know. I'm Brian.
I'm Ben.
So Fallout 76, its servers are live as we speak, but there are already some issues. A lot of issues that we're going to talk about. I have to kind of break them out into sections to get to all these
Surprising
issues.
Absolutely nobody, Bethesda has a buggy game.
What? That's not the Bethesda I know. Yes, it is. So there's, bugs and glitches. It's getting review bombed already. Players are complaining that there's not a lot to do. There's huge issues with players just getting disconnected from the game. There's a whole thing about bobby pins, and they weigh way too much for bobby pins. So let's get into it and talk about, first of all, the review bombs. So it's out, but we're already seeing some negative reviews. IGN, which is obviously not an amateur, they're a games media, they called it a weirdly lifeless adventure played solo. But you know what? It's an online game. But this is one of my favorite reviews from Sleazy898 on Metacritic, called it terrible, ridden with bugs as one should expect from Bethesda, FPS locked, no FOV controls, fetched quests, laggy, boring. This is what they worked on in 4 years? Laughable.
Dang.
Ouch. What do you, what's your impression so far from what you're seeing?
Yeah, so from what I've heard mostly about Fallout 76, I'm interested to jump into the game.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily wanting to dive right into it. I could still go back to Red Dead 2 and be okay.
Right.
But for the most part, it seems to me very similar to the Sea of Thieves launch, right? Where they, day one, brought out Sea of Thieves. Everybody had issues logging into the servers and trying to even get together in a crew, where you could possibly get in by yourself, and even then there were issues where you could find all your other friends. Right. And even then, once you got in, there wasn't a lot to do. You found out that you could sail the seas, pick up treasure, and that's it.
And they've updated it a lot since and added a lot of content, but you only get that one chance to make the first impression. I wonder if that'll happen with Fallout 76. We should also note, online games are notorious for launching with issues. Even going back to World of Warcraft had a ton of issues. So I think it's more of a matter of how quickly they jump on this and fix it. But if it's content issues, I don't think those are easier. Those are as easy to fix.
Once again, it's a Sea of Thieves conundrum, right? Where that game came out, and I think they had to kind of scramble to figure out what they were going to do with that game.
Right.
And then they came out with a roadmap of here's all the stuff that we're going to release.
Right.
To be fair to Bethesda, it does seem like this game has more to do for what Sea of Thieves gave. Where there are like mob boss monsters that you can go and attack, and you can meet up with your friends, and there does seem to be some benefits to building your base, and it has a little bit more there, but I think they're still leaning on the whole, create the stories with your friends, which can be very hit or miss for players.
I do think it seems like with this game, it's going to be up to the players to make something out of it or make something interesting. If they do, I think people will jump on board. If not, I think it's going to bomb.
Absolutely.
The other, let's say, there's so much other stuff. There's also just some tinkering that needs to be done. I brought up bobby pins before. Apparently, the issue right now is that a bobby pin weighs more than ammo for your weapons. Bobby pins, obviously, you use them to break into locked items, loot what's inside. But Redditor Sir Pleasantberry pointed out 20 bobby pins weigh the same as a missile, 30 pins are similar in weight to some weapons, 60 bobby pins are the same weight as a mini nuke for the Fat Man launcher. That seems unbalanced.
Just a little bit. That seems like one of those things Bethesda is going to have to just tweak going forward.
Yeah, did somebody put a decimal in the wrong place? That's what it seems like.
It's that, or it just seems to be a balance thing, right? Like bobby pins are the big, you can lockpick items, and so they had to find some way to balance that and make it so you can't just stockpile them.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense just in the world-wise to have
It's
bobby
laughable.
pins that weigh the size of a gun.
Right, because I can think of a bobby pin and in my hand, and it weighs almost nothing.
You get a bag of 30 of them, and it's the size of a nuke.
I got a missile all of a sudden. Yeah. The other thing they've really been going through. Well, let me back up for a second. The game is getting really bad reviews from players, and how much do you think that matters? At the beginning, because things get review bombed, and then they kind of, recover. But this does feel like people don't like it, or what their first impressions of the game are bad.
For a game like this, I don't think it matters because it's going to be an ever-evolving world where you will have something change. There will be more content that comes out,
Yes.
and steadily it'll bounce it out. Even with what is currently there, I think it doesn't really make sense. I think people are basing their reviews off of the beta and maybe haven't even played the game, because the game launched last night at midnight.
Right.
And since then there have been, I think I saw on the PC version, one of the versions on Metacritic had already, I think, 455 to 500 reviews, most of them negative, and most of them pointing out issues that happened during the beta. And if you look at the install size,
so they're reviewing something they played a month ago or a few weeks ago rather than.
And this thing has a huge day one patch.
Yeah.
And I know that's something we're going to get
50 gigs.
Oh my god! On top of the 45 gig disk, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think somebody sort of looked at the download. I think Windows Central looked at the download and figured out that 50 gig day one patch. Almost all of that is the game. It just used 247 megs from the disk. So you don't even really need rendering the physical version basically obsolete.
Which nowadays is kind of commonplace. Black Ops 4 day one patch was 50 gigs.
Yep.
It's just something that's currently becoming the norm, and we'll see how that handles, because I know USA's internet infrastructure is going to be a thing going forward for day one patches, where it's just going to be here's the whole game. You can buy the disc, but it's basically just like a cover.
Right. They should just put a code in it.
Yeah.
So another thing we should talk about, and you can tell me more about this, but there's a lot of controversy over Bethesda and the creation engine going forward. So what are people mad about, and why?
So I think people are freaking out because they're thinking that Skyrim's engine is going to be used for things like Starfield, Elder Scrolls 6.
That is bullshit. I'm mad now.
If you used the exact engine, but that's not quite how engines work. There's a little bit more to it where it's something that you build upon. Fallout 76, for instance, had, I think, a whole new lighting system built for the game. It's something more that you plug things into this engine and it becomes the framework for a game.
Okay.
Over something like it's using the same exact stuff or the same exact code that things like Skyrim used.
Meaning that an engine is like an updatable thing rather than we're going to use the exact same tools that we built Skyrim with to make these new games.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's still, I guess, feasible that they're going to be using a lot of stuff from Skyrim, but it's going to be stuff that's been updated since then. So I don't think it's something for immediate panic. That's not to say, though, that they're not going to have a ton of bugs like Bethesda usually has for a game.
Bethesda, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they're also known for not having the most graphically advanced games, right? I mean, they don't,
That's usually something that usually falls to modders for things like PC,
right.
And then you see all these crazy mods that have fully blown out the games with 4K textures and insane, updates.
God bless you, modders. We love you. And speaking of bugs, there have been some.
A little bit.
Maybe more than some for Fallout 76. Let's run down the highlights.
And more so, I think that we're seeing a lot of, oh God, so many bugs in this Bethesda game. I don't think it's anything more than what a Bethesda game usually has, and these will be patched. But there have been some very, very strange ones. Things like in the beta, I believe, where you would go to install the game, and then if you click to launch before something had been set on their servers, the game would just delete itself.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You have to completely re-download everything. There's also things where the speed was tied to the frame rate, where you could then just look at the ground and speed off in one direction. You saw stuff like that.
That's badass. That's a perk, man.
It sounds really cool. That's something that modders will dive into and change the INI file.
Right.
And then once something is slightly modified, you have enemies blazing across the map. You can look down and jump. And so Bethesda went in and patched that for the day one patch. And now I believe the INI file they tried setting it to read-only. That didn't work. So they had to tie it to something else. And now you can still go in and modify the INI file. But I think when the game launches, it checks it and changes all of those to what they should be.
Okay.
But that means the FPS is capped. Same with the FOV. So some modders and still players on PC can't get the full extent of their hardware.
Yep.
And so people are upset about that. There's also, I think, a notable glitch for power armor, where people that are using power armor, equipping it or storing it, strips them entirely of the power armor graphically on their character, throws them in their underwear, and renders them immobile in some kind of weird T-pose.
Maybe the power armor fucked up their bodies because they were trying it, and it just
there has to be a trade-off, right?
Yeah, exactly. You wanted power armor, you wanted an exoskeleton. This is what you get.
We're breaking both of your arms, though. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Well, those are some bugs.
A little bit. I think overall, this is a pretty typical Bethesda game on its launch.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of talk for what's going on and what's currently happening with the game, and there's a lot coming down at once. But for the most part, I think this is pretty standard. I think going forward, if Bethesda continues to update the game and goes from there, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah. I think, and again, online games have always, since time began, had issues. But yeah, I think it's a question of if they jump on this quickly and fix it, then
they can
players,
recover well.
Yeah, and players will get to see the game as it was intended. Now, whether they like that or not, that's another question entirely.
Just notable examples over the last few years that I can think of. Sea of Thieves had a rough launch. Diablo 3, the first day that launched on PC,
my God.
people were scrambling to get
It's
in.
like a shit show.
People had taken the next 2 days off of work just to sit and play, and they couldn't connect. And I think it's just a
they're going to play with themselves for the next 2 days. Yeah, because they ain't playing Diablo. Thank you, Aaron. That was for you guys.
Not going to dignify that with a response.
I think, I'll be interested to see how this shakes out, whether they recover. The one thing I think that Bethesda should be worried about is that gamers have a lot of options right now.
It's true.
Because there's Red Dead, Smash is coming, there's other online games, there's Destiny, there's, World of Warcraft has an update.
I mentioned at the top of this that I have Red Dead I can go back to right now. I don't need to dive into this game.
Exactly.
But, I mean, if you look at something like, I keep bringing it up, Sea of Thieves, I've seen so many updates with that. I would love to take a weekend to dive into that and see what's changed.
Or do people think like, you know what, I'm going to come to this game in 2 months when they get everything fixed out and there's more content to enjoy. I can totally see people
Absolutely.
doing that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Let us know what you think. If you have played Fallout 76 and you have impressions, definitely sound off in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you later. Sync on that.
I'll use one.
Sync on that. Okay.